Old Testament law had a lot of laws, 613 of them. Crazy. It was just so many laws compared to the New Testament. Down to even how you use the bathroom. Listen to Deuteronomy 23. Designate a place outside the camp where you can go and relieve yourself. As part of your equipment, have something to dig with. When you relieve yourself, dig a hole, cover your excrement. For the Lord your God moves about in your camp to protect you and deliver you from your enemies. Your camp must be holy, so you will not see among you anything indecent or turn away. This was all part of, as they're traveling around in the wilderness, ready to enter the promised land. God didn't want them, squatting in front of others. Go outside the camp. Eventually, they started creating bathrooms like this one. You should be half cheeking it, by the way. You're not sitting on it right.
Yeah, you're going to get a little dirty.
Yeah, you need to half cheek it.
David, did you and Sue sit on one of these?
Yeah.
Now I need a picture of this.
Yeah. So, and by the way, that little trough running in front of you, there's water running through that with little sticks, sponges at the end. You'd take a sponge and you'd clean yourself. That's how you do that. At times they put an orchestra here to cover the noise. That's what you do. But yeah,
Are you making this up?
I am not making this up. I wish I were.
It's pretty ingenious, actually.
It's for real.
Like 20 people.
It's for real. Let me tell you a serious story here while you're. Again, you should be half cheeking it, but whatever works for you. Josiah was one of the great kings of the South, one of the last kings of the South. And he hears the law that's read, and he decides we have a lot to do to fix it. Which takes me back to where we were yesterday at Dan. If you have a Bible, you could just listen to me. Listen. I'm going to read 2 Kings 23. 2 Kings 23, beginning at verse 15. You remember the altar we saw up at Dan? There's one at Dan and one at Bethel. It says this. Even the altar at Bethel, the high place made by Jeroboam, son of Nebat, who had caused Israel to sin, even that altar and high place he demolished. He burned the high place and ground it to powder. He burned the Asherah pole also. Then Josiah looked around, and when he saw the tombs that were there on the hillside, he had the bones removed from them and burned them on the altar to defile it, in accordance with the word the Lord proclaimed by the man of God who foretold these things. What does that mean? If dead bones or a dead body was put on an altar and burned, it would defile. They'd never use it as a false place of worship again. So that's how he would defy the altars that Jeroboam had set up. And then verse 19, just as he had done at Bethel, Josiah removed all the shrines of the high places the kings of Israel had built in the towns of Samaria and aroused the Lord's anger. Josiah slaughtered all the priests of those high places on the altars and burned human bones on them. Then he went back to Jerusalem. So he didn't just do it at Bethel, he did it in Dan also. He did it throughout the northern tribes. So what is that? Why do I tell that story here where we are with toilets? Well, there is a story of a toilet in 2 Kings from Samaria. And we're not in Samaria, but not too far from here. We're near the hills of Samaria. There's a story of a king of the north, Jehu. He was mentioned yesterday. Jehu is, my favorite phrase about Jehu is that it says, he was coming to deliver a message, and it says it must be Jehu because he's driving like a wild man or like a madman. So whenever I'm with a wild driver, I call him Jehu. But anyway, listen to 2 Kings 10 says this, verse 18. Then Jehu brought all the people together and said to them, Ahab served Baal a little, Jehu will serve him much. Now summon all the prophets of Baal, all his servants, all his priests. See that no one is missing. I'm going to hold a great sacrifice for Baal. Anyone who fails to come will no longer live. Then catch this. But Jehu was acting deceptively in order to destroy the servants of Baal. So he's calling all the prophets, all the servants, all the priests of Baal. Then we read this in verse 20. Jehu said, call an assembly in honor of Baal. So they proclaimed it. Then he sent word throughout Israel, and all the servants of Baal came. Not one stayed away. They crowded into the temple of Baal until it was full from one end to the other. And Jehu said to the keeper of the wardrobe, bring robes for all the servants of Baal. So he brought robes for them. He wanted to make sure he could identify who they were. Then Jehu and Jenadab, son of Rechab, went into the temple of Baal. Jehu said to the servants of Baal, "Look around and see, no one who serves the Lord is here, only servants of Baal." So they went in to make sacrifices and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had posted 80 men outside with this warning: "If any one of you lets any of the men I'm placing in your hands escape, it will be your life for his life." As soon as Jehu had finished making the burnt offering, he ordered the guards and officers, "Go in and kill them. Let no one escape." So they cut them down with a sword. The guards and officers threw the bodies out, entered the inner shrine of the temple of Baal. They brought the sacred stone out of the temple of Baal and burned it. They demolished the sacred stone of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal, and people have used it as a latrine to this day. So if you want to stop false worship at a particular place, there's two things you can do. You can burn bones on it, they wouldn't use it, or you could use it as a toilet, and then they won't do it anymore. And you were in Lachish. Remember that place you visited without me? Remember that place? Yeah. And Adam, I'm sure, told you about it. They found a toilet there in a sacred spot. It was how you would desecrate it. It's fascinating to me that. But Lachish, they found that. I think it's 5 or 6 years ago now. It's quite something. Anyway, this wasn't used as a place to desecrate worship. It was used because of this great city. You need to go to the bathroom, and wow, aren't you thankful for individual stalls in the United States? But I thought you might be interested to see how public bathrooms would be used in a place in a large city such as this. More important than ever that you use the bathroom before you leave the house, kids. You don't want to use it there.
So this was men and women both that would come in here.
Yeah, I think it was mixed. Yeah. Yeah, it was just a pleasant thing. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to turn you loose. Let me look at the clock here. Okay, it is 9:16. We need to be on the bus moving at 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock. Now, there is, on the way out, there is a trap called a gift shop with coffee and all that stuff. And if you're walking through there at 9:59, you'll be like, "Oh, I should just get a coffee." That's when you want to walk through there at 9:50, not at 9:59. Use the restrooms and coffee shop. No, not here. Not here. Good clarification.
There's no water right
Can't
now.
find a sponge. But one thing I really there's two things I think are of most interest. One is if you want to get a view from up high. I'll take you around to those stairs. You have to go around this way to get to the stairs. I mentioned the other day, that tree up there, if you saw the movie Jesus Christ Superstar, that's the tree apparently they used for the hanging of Judas from that movie. But then the other thing I'd like you to see is those on this side can see where the coverings are, where the roof structure is. I would love you to to get over there because it's going to help you when we get to Masada. It gives great descriptions of what a Roman bathhouse was like. And it shows it's a gymnasium / bathhouse. And you can so make sure you take a few minutes if you can. Of course, there's Main Street and there's plenty to look at. So
I'll go over to the bathhouse.
Okay. Yeah, Adam will go straight to the bathhouse if people want to go along with him. But if anybody's wanting to hike to the top, I'm going to hike up to the top. If anyone wants to do that first, you can walk with me because we'll walk around this way. He talked about the pillars that fell right in place at the earthquake. I'm going to pass those on the way. All right, see you on the bus at 10 o'clock.